Good afternoon. Welcome to Cohn Zone Late Edition, CZLE. I'm Grant Cohn. That's Lowell Cohn. The season's over. The Niners, not champions yet. They spoke. Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, and a bunch of players spoke today. It was the goodbye day where they pack up their things, put it in boxes, mail them home, and then they're gone, and they don't come back for months. That was it. How you doing, Dad?
I'm okay. I've covered a lot of those goodbye days in a lot of sports, and I have to say, I often find them boring. But I don't think that was the case today. So I'm going to ask you to perform an exercise that I would give to my writing students at Stanford or University of San Francisco. I would like you to do in the present tense, a first-person narrative starting with walking into the locker room today on pack-up day, and what do you see? Present tense, first person.
Okay. I walk in, and it's quiet. There aren't many players milling around. If there's a player, they're at their locker, and they're unpacking. So I walk in, and I see a group around Trent Williams. He's talking already. I missed the first 30 seconds of his interview. So I run over, I get my phone out, and I'm filming him, and I've never seen him look more depressed. There's a very flat affect in his voice. There's no emotion. He just sounds depressed, answering questions in as few words as possible. And I don't judge him for it. It just reminds me of how difficult it is for players to talk after a loss like this, and how, remarkable it was that someone like George Kittle could be so composed after the game and go into such details. So Trent Williams, monosyllabic, depressed, not into it. Then we see, it's like one person at a time walks in. I see Brandon Ayuk on my left, and he's wearing sunglasses and a hat, all black, like he's at a funeral, and he's hugging someone. And someone says, Brandon Ayuk's ready. I was thinking Brandon wouldn't talk. He looked like he was at a funeral, and he had the sunglasses on, which kind of indicated he may not be interested in talking. And he also seems to be on social media talking about a contract extension or a trade, whatever. Brandon's ready to talk. We all go over there. I'm surprised. We start asking him questions. And at first it seems like he's, I don't know, maybe being difficult. Like he doesn't really want to talk, answering and barely answering. But remember, he has these glasses on. It's hard to see his eyes. And then once we get past the questions about his contract, start asking about the Super Bowl, you could hear that he's crying, and he's trying his best to answer our questions while trying his best not to cry. And after about 3 minutes, he says, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And he gets his things, walks out. And as he walks out, I say, Brandon, I just want to say you had a great season. Congratulations. And he said, thank you. That was the last I'll see of him, maybe ever as a 49er. Who knows? I got to work that out. He could be the next DeForest Buckner. So he leaves. And then who was next? Brock Purdy's ready. And he stands at his locker for 15 minutes, like the head coach of the team, like he's completely over it. It was the exact opposite of Brandon Ayuk. Whatever you need, I can give it to you, which is, I guess, how a quarterback has to act. After him, there's Christian McCaffrey, monosyllables, seething anger. George Kittle, once again, it's just one after another. George Kittle, helpful. He's gotten really good with the media. We used to say that he was a bit of a phony. Not anymore. He's very serious. He's been one of the more serious people on the team after this loss. So he talks. Nick Bosa talks. He's composed. Deebo Samuel talks. And I'm not sure why. He stood there and refused to answer questions. He should have just not talked. One after another. And it was interesting to see how different players dealt with it in different ways. Some guys were angry. Some guys were sad. Some guys were over it, or at least outwardly.
Iggy, you said McCaffrey was seething with anger. What do you mean by that?
Like, there's a difference between, I'm not going to say much because I just don't have the words. I'm kind of depressed I'm not going to say much because I'm not sure I have something good to say. Like clenching your jaw. He looked like he was clenching his jaw and holding himself back from saying, I don't know what he wanted to say. But it wasn't like, man, it's just, I don't know. That was Trent Williams. I don't know. Christian McCaffrey was like, "Yep, it's a really tough feeling. I haven't thought about it. Yeah, it's hard." I goes, "Oh yeah, I'll talk to my dad." I don't know. How do you interpret the difference? That's just how I saw it.
I didn't see him, so it's impossible for me to say. But I did see Ayuk because you posted the video of him. At first, I agree with you. I thought he was being difficult, but then I realized no, he's actually trying to be helpful and he's fighting against his emotions. And then he did start to cry. And what I want to say is, I have tremendous respect for him. This obviously meant everything to him. It's not wrong for a grown man to cry. It meant everything to him. And he did the best he could. So I want to say I respect him and my heart goes out to him. I would also say, although later I'm going to be critical of the Niners, my heart goes out to those players. And here's what I mean. Iggy, they really thought they were going to win. That's part of what you saw today. They're shocked that they didn't win. They thought they were the better team, and they may be the better team. And it's like the earth started spinning the other way. It was incomprehensible to them and still is that they lost that game. That's why it felt like a funeral in there. They felt in a way they had died because they expected to keep living, that they would be the Super Bowl champions. And God love them for it. But it will take them time to get over it. And I think in this regard, it's good. It shows that it deep down mattered to them, that they were fully invested. And I respect that. Now, I have a lot of criticisms on how they played and how they were coached, but how they reacted, I'm talking about today, and I only saw a little bit on the video. I thought they were terrific. And even Deebo Samuel, he came across a little curt and a little rude, but I don't think he meant to. I think he was having trouble. And I think if you were to see Samuel in 2 weeks, you and he could smile and shake hands.
Absolutely.
Iggy, can you hear me? Because you're freezing a tiny bit, but talk a little. Let me make sure I can hear you.
Definitely.
I'm not.
All the players mentioned.
Can you hear me?
This loss felt like much more. Yeah, can you hear me, or is my internet terrible? Internet's really bad.
Okay. Keep talking, and I'll let you know. I got you. Yeah.
Okay.
Keep talking, guy.
Okay.
One possibility. Yeah.
Players kept talking about. The players kept talking about how this loss felt like much more painful than the last Super Bowl loss. And you just mentioned like why. They even asked Kyle Shanahan, why was this one more painful? And he just kind of summed it up like, well, it was because we were in overtime. No, it wasn't just because you were in overtime. It's because you were favored to win and the team thinks they're better than the Chiefs. And it was really close. And when you come away from that game thinking, why did the Niners lose? It's unclear why they lost. The defense played well. The offense didn't play well. Why? Well, the quarterback did play well. Brock Purdy didn't throw a bunch of turnovers. He protected the ball. He was good. So why did the offense not? I mean, no one really answered the question. And I think the answer is the coach. And when you start to lose confidence in the head coach, that's a big problem. So maybe they haven't. Maybe they'll be all in with Kyle Shanahan when the season starts next year. But I think right now they're having really serious questions about the most important person in their organization.
About his judgment.
Yeah.
Right, Iggy, about his judgment. So let me tell a little story here. I had been in Las Vegas with Iggy, and I flew home Sunday morning to watch the game at home. I wasn't I'm no longer credentialed, so I couldn't go in the press box, and I didn't want to spend $6,000 for a ticket, nor did I want to hang around Iggy's hotel room. So I came home and I was watching the game, and in the third quarter, my phone rings, and I was kind of angry because people know I'm a former sports writer, and why would you bother me in the Super Bowl? I look, it's Ira Miller. Now, Ira Miller and I covered all those great teams at the Chronicle for the 49ers, and Ira is the gold standard, Iggy. Everyone agrees, right, in terms of football coverage. He's retired now like I am. And he says, Lowell, I can't believe it. Shanahan is doing it again. He said he hasn't learned. So what do you mean, I? He says, look, it's the third quarter. He's thrown all these passes. He's just gone 3 and out, 3 in a row. And he says, if they lose this game, he lost it in the third quarter. Ira is so sharp. And I hadn't even been thinking about it. I was just watching the game. And then he said, he got me, he couldn't get off the phone. He was so worked up. He knew Mike Shanahan very well. Ira did. And he said, when he won with Elway, who's a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. I mean, I don't think we need to argue about that. Mike Shanahan, he won 2 in a row, right, Iggy? And Ira showed me that he ran more than half the time, even with Elway. But this guy, his son, passes more than half the time in this game. So he didn't learn from the other times he gave up leads in the Super Bowl. He hasn't learned why he did that in the third quarter. You asked him after the game, and he gave you some baloney answer. Every play is different, meaning drop that. Oh, you're right. You asked him, why'd you go away from the running game? He said, I didn't, which is demonstrably untrue.
Yeah, he did.
So it's he. Of course he did. So here's what I want to say. When I used to cover Bill Walsh, I learned a lot of things about sports, football, and life from him. And as you've heard me say before, Bill would say, Lowell, the quarterback is the limit of my offense. And I think what he meant was, I've had 2 of the greatest quarterbacks ever, Joe and Steve, although really Steve was with George Seifert. So I've had Joe. And I think Bill was saying, I have a million plays in my imagination. Probably Joe can't do every one of them, like throw down the field really long. And he as great as he is, he presents a limit to what I can imagine. I think it's the exact opposite with the 49ers currently. I don't think Brock Purdy is the limit to the offense. I think he's good. There's a lot of things he can do. The limit to the offense is Kyle Shanahan, in that he limits himself. He's doing well. He has a lead going into the third quarter, and all of a sudden he makes very strange, self-defeating calls, which come back to really hurt them, and they lose the game. And I think he can go back to the third quarter. So the limit of Kyle's offense is Kyle, not Brock Purdy. He's his own worst enemy, Iggy.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to say that Brock Purdy limits Kyle, because this is what Kyle wants in a quarterback. He's made it real clear. This is exactly what he wants in a quarterback, because what's important to him isn't necessarily some guy who can sort of transcend his mistakes and go beyond the X's and O's. He wants a guy who executes the system as well as possible, because his system is so great. So this is what he wants. Brock Purdy isn't the limit. The system is the limit. The system's the problem. It's a good system, but the system led Kyle Shanahan to call 11 passes for Deebo Samuel in a game when he couldn't get open. And the question is, why? Did you really think Deebo was your best option, or did you just like the plays that he was featured in? Because if you were more focused on players than plays, which you should be, you'd be calling plays for Brandon Ayuk. Because in this game, he averaged 16 point something yards per catch, and he only got 6 targets, and he caught 3 of them. You should be going to him because he's objectively better than Deebo Samuel. Also, George Kittle. I mean, you never threw him the ball in the game. You never called his number in the game. You kept going to Deebo. Why? That's a limit. You can't even figure out who your best players are on that given day. That's a limit.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, and I'll even add to it. He is so invested in his plays, he doesn't respond to the flow of the game. He wants to call X play here. Well, maybe it's not the right play there. Maybe if you actually stop looking at your play sheet and looked at the freaking field, you would see what's really going on, and you would adjust what you're doing. But he doesn't. Yep. He's a prisoner of his own system, and because of that, he is his own worst enemy, and he is his limit. And Iggy, I'm going to tell you this. He may win a Super Bowl in his career, but I don't think he will. I think he's always going to get in his own way. And if he wins a Super Bowl, and if I'm still alive, I'll say I was wrong. But he's had his shots, Iggy. He's had 3 shots now, and he strikes me as what we used to call a high level loser.
Yeah. Because if he doesn't get what he expects, he can't adjust mid-game. After the game, Brock
No.
Purdy said, the Chiefs played a lot more man-to-man coverage than we anticipated, meaning than Kyle Shanahan anticipated. He makes the game plan. And by playing man-to-man coverage, the Chiefs had these really good cornerbacks, including their nickelback, Trent McDuffie, who absolutely
He was
erased
good.
Deebo Samuel from the game. 22, erased Deebo Samuel from the game. Kyle kept calling plays. I don't know what he was expecting. But after the 4th target, the 5th target, can't you tell that Deebo's not getting open? I could tell, you could tell, everyone could tell that Deebo wasn't getting open. Instead of just sticking with the game plan, which wasn't even applicable anymore because you weren't facing what you thought you would, why don't you adjust and go to the guy who's been producing for you all year in Brandon Ayuk, or your tight end who's been producing for you for 5 or 6 years in George Kittle? I just don't understand that one. Can't blame Brock Purdy for that.
No, I thought Brock Purdy played well enough. But I'd like to talk about Brock Purdy for a moment. Part of the whole discussion of the Niners this year, and it was interesting because it persisted. How good is he? Is he a game manager or is he a game changer? And I think we could really talk about that a little now. The system wasn't working. Kyle was his own worst enemy, and he couldn't get out of the traps he laid for himself. A game changer could overcome Kyle, because you weren't going to win this game if you didn't overcome Kyle and his system, his Bible of football. Patrick Mahomes could overcome his coach. In the last time they beat the Niners, he overcame Andy Reid and told them what they were going to do at the end. There are other quarterbacks who can overcome a bad coach or a flawed coach that day and a system that's not working. The guy up in Buffalo, Josh Allen, can do it. Burrow can do it. The guy, I was going to say San Diego Chargers. I always say in the Chargers, Herbert, he can do it. Herbert. And also Lamar Jackson obviously can do it. Although he didn't do it in the playoffs. But Purdy is not at that level. Purdy is not at that level. He's not one of those 4 or 5 guys who can overcome a bad Kyle or a bad anybody or a bad Andy. He exists and performs beautifully in the system. But if the system is flawed, he's not going to go beyond the system and win for you. So does that make him a bad quarterback? No. Is he a quarterback who could win a Super Bowl? Conceivably, if the coach learns from his mistakes, which he doesn't seem to. But there's an extra thing that's a superstar, Iggy. We used to talk about superstars. We don't anymore. Michael Jordan was a superstar. Some of these guys I named are superstars. He's not a superstar. And Iggy, he'll be a wonderful quarterback and he'll have a great career. He will never be a superstar. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. He's a very good quarterback. But am I here? Am I still here? Am I here?
Yeah, you're here.
Am I here? Hello?
You're there.
All right. Yeah, he's not a superstar. Yeah. He's a very good quarterback. He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's their best option. He's not someone you necessarily want to replace, but not a superstar. And it seems like to win a Super Bowl in this era with Patrick Mahomes in the NFL, you might need a superstar at quarterback, because even the teams that have superstars at quarterback can't beat the Chiefs. That's what's so tough about him. And I don't know. I mean, he's very good, but the best thing he did in this game was not turn the ball over. He only scored 1 touchdown, and to get that second touchdown, they had to get a wide receiver to throw the ball on a trick play. So it seems like in the biggest games against the best teams, he's managing the game. His job is to not lose it. And he didn't. He's not the reason the Niners lost this game. But if Patrick Mahomes is going to lose a Super Bowl, it's going to be against a quarterback who's trying to do more than not lose the game.
I agree. I don't know what you gave him for a grade. I'd give him some sort of a B, Brock Purdy. Not an A for sure. What did you?
Gave him a B.
A B. Yeah.
I gave him a
And
B.
what's
He
more,
was
a
good.
B is it's a good grade, but he was not
A.
an A in that game.
What would you give
Iggy,
Patrick Mahomes in that game?
an A. He led him at the end and he won the game.
That's all that matters.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point.
That's the whole point.
It looked like they were going to lose, and then they didn't lose, and they didn't lose because of him. And there was those runs. It was he did everything. And it was very interesting. I don't want to get lost in it, but those runs, it's clearly the 49er defense lost contain on those. They had done beautifully all game long and all. Yeah.
It's interesting, all their sins caught up with them at the end of this game. Their offensive line fell apart. They didn't invest in it. We talked about it. They didn't spend a single draft pick on it. They gave up long runs to the quarterback. That's been an issue for them for years. The kicker missed an extra point. We've been talking about him. Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, you had said it.
Really prepared for the crisis moment.
No, never is. But you had said it might come down to the kicker. You did. You said, I'm going to come from off the reservation. And you were right. It came down, among other things, to the kicker a lot more than from the quarterback, I have to say. Iggy, I wanted to say one other thing. I was watching today. They put the press conference on the internet. And I want to talk about Kyle's behavior. First of all, I understand why Ayuk was looking the way he looked. He wore a floppy hat with ear flaps, and he was almost hiding his face. What we said, he was hiding in plain sight. Now here comes John Lynch. He's wearing a nice shirt, and he's his hair is combed, and he's very professional. Next to him is the head coach. He's wearing a hat pulled down over his face, like he's trying to hide as well. Like he can't look anybody in the eye. And what's more, Lynch looks really professional. Kyle Shanahan looks like he climbed out of the hamper. He just climbed out of the hamper. And I'm thinking, is this really how you want to present yourself? Like we're going to go really kick butt next season, but you're wearing a hat, you're hiding, you're disheveled. Take a shower, look better. Bill Walsh wouldn't have come out like that. He would have come out peppy and enthusiastic and proud of how he looked. And I'm proud of how. Not that Bill ever lost a Super Bowl, by the way. He never lost a Super Bowl. 3 he won, and he never lost a bowl game. So he never actually was in that position like this guy is in all the time. But I wanted to say something else about him. Someone asked today, are you going to invest in the offensive line? Rather than answering the question, because it's a no-brainer that they need to. Well, we need to invest in a lot of positions. If we take one away, you know what I mean? He talked all around it, Iggy, as opposed to saying, maybe we ought to do that because they ought to do that. So I didn't like the fact that he was dancing around the issue. And what he tries to do is bury the issue in words. Well, it goes that way for every position. No, it doesn't, Kyle. You need a better right side of your offensive line. Anybody knows that. After the game, I understand that everybody was upset, as they should have been, and they had a right to be. So I want to compare. First, I know Kyle came first, but I'm going to go with Kittle first. You had mentioned earlier, you and I used to think Kittle was a BS artist and a phony. I've never met the guy, but I've sort of seen his growth on the internet, in interviews. He was so forthright after the game and so mature. You could ask him any question, and he would do his best to answer to the best of his knowledge. He represented the team like he was the coach. He was phenomenal. And if I were still working, and if I had been there, I would have said afterward, I know how hard this was for you, George. You were terrific. Thank you so much. So that's the gold standard, what he was. Previously, the coach came in, And any questions that didn't really refer to the game. How does it feel? I love those questions. All of a sudden, media people turn into psychiatrists. How did it
Yeah.
feel? All of that. He could answer all that stuff. But when you asked him, the first question you asked him was which one, Iggy?
How would you assess your offense?
How would you assess your offense? He gives Iggy a look. And, again, I wasn't there. I would actually say it was vicious. It was like, if I could choke you to death right now, I would. And what did he say? How would you? There were lots of plays. Is that what he said?
Each play is different.
Each play is different. That's a screw you. That's a
Mhm.
screw you. That's
Mhm.
that's. I don't want to answer you. It's uncomfortable for me to answer you. I knew you'd be the jerk who would actually want to hold me accountable for what I did in the game. And I want you viewers to listen to this. You might say, well, it's unfair to ask him a question like that. He just lost the Super Bowl. It's not how a journalist thinks. We hold people of power, we hold them to the truth. We ask them the hard questions. He gets paid a lot of money, more than I get paid, more than Iggy gets paid. He gets paid a lot of money, and part of it is representing the team and not blowing off a legitimate question. I thought that compared to Kittle, he acted childish. And then Iggy, he did it again. You asked, why did you go away from the running game? And he said, I didn't. Are you with me? He said, I didn't go away from the running
Mhm.
game, which the statistics tell you he's lying. He's gaslighting
Mm.
you. And does he think the people there are a bunch of morons that they haven't read the game book and they don't know what he did when he lost the game for the team in the third quarter? He might have said, I'd really have to go back over the plays and see what I called. I'm open to the possibility I could have done better. Or this is why I called all the passes. But to say I didn't go away from the run is demonstrably untrue and makes him look weak, makes him look
Mhm.
like someone running away, which Kittle didn't do. So I feel that Kittle has grown into a real grown up, someone that I respect in those situations. Kyle hasn't grown at all. He hasn't
Not at
grown
all.
at all. And I think part of his issue as a coach is reflected in how he acted after the game. He can't take responsibility, he can't take blame, and he hasn't grown. And if that sounds very hard, I'm sorry. And I want to say one other thing, and I know I'm dominating, Iggy. Um, I want to say one other thing. People could say, I always hear the Cohns, they're haters. The Cohns, they're so negative. We're not being negative. Negative is, I don't care. What do I care about the 49ers? Who cares? That's negative. We're being critical. We are invested in this team. I covered them for 40 years through a lot of stuff, a lot of great stuff. I'm critical because I hold them to the standard of Bill Walsh and George Seifert. And this York bunch is not in that universe. Never has been. I don't think ever will be, but I could be wrong. There's a gold standard that the Niners established, and that's why they're the most important team in the Bay Area, and that's why we talk about them, and that's why Iggy covers them. They have let that gold standard down. Jed let it down when he had a victory lap before the Super Bowl, when he went off on what did he say, Iggy, about it? He knows how champions think. What did he say, Jed?
Champions act like champions before they're champions.
Yeah. Let me tell you something, Jed. You wouldn't know the first thing about how champions act. When have you ever been a champion? You're the owner. No, you're not the owner. Let's not mess around. Mom and dad gave you the team. You're the CEO or something, but you're not the owner. But you've never been a champion. Your Uncle Eddie was a champion. You were a kid. What do you know about being a champion? Clearly, you know nothing. You've never been a champion. You can't speak on that subject, and you sure shouldn't have spoken in those terms before the game. because now you look silly. And I'll tell you how else you look silly. You gave Lynch and Kyle Shanahan extensions. What was it, after the third week? It's like you had won the Super Bowl after the third week of the season and you gave them extensions. What are you talking about? That's not how a grown-up acts. Apparently, you're very successful or strong in your relationships with Santa Clara and the city government. I don't want to get into that, but you seem to be successful and know what you're doing. You give these guys an extension? Then? Why? What did you gain by it? Did it get you a Super Bowl? It didn't get you a Super Bowl. It got you where you always are, which is nowhere. I'm sorry, Iggy.
It's interesting
What do you
that,
got to say?
this loss revealed so much. What? Am I here?
In and out
Am
a
I here?
little bit.
You got me?
Start it again. Gotcha. Yeah. Start it again.
It's interesting how this loss revealed so much about so many people. Like, we thought Kyle Shanahan had grown and changed. He hasn't. He's the same exact guy. But who has grown and changed is George Kittle, Nick Bosa. Like, the veterans of this team have really taken over the team. It's their team. They coach. The leaders of the 49ers are George Kittle, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, those guys. And Kyle Shanahan isn't particularly a leader or a good one. Jed York isn't a leader. John Lynch is a natural leader. But this loss really revealed who can stand up and lead this team during the darkest time, and it's not Kyle.
I would have to agree with you. It's not Kyle. If he could have
Not Kyle.
slid under the podium, he could have slid under the podium today. He would. He didn't want to see anybody, or his answer was so indirect. And in fact, at various times, Lynch had to come in and explain what Kyle had just said. Yeah.
Say again?
Okay.
Yeah.
At certain points, Lynch had to come in and explain what Kyle had just said because he was sort of babbling. Kyle. He was.
I'd have to say every single player who spoke today did a better job than Kyle.
Yeah. Iggy, I have a question for you. There's been a lot of talk about the overtime rules. Can you hear me? About the overtime rules. Do you think Kyle knew the overtime rules?
I didn't hear that part. Can you say that part? Can you say it again?
Sure.
Sorry.
This is tough. Iggy, do you think Kyle knew the overtime rules?
No, I don't. He keeps changing his story. After the game, when he was initially asked by someone on TV why he did what he did, he said, well, I really hoped that we could have got that touchdown so that Mahomes wouldn't have got another chance. Well, no, that's the regular season rules. If you score a touchdown on the first drive, then the other team doesn't get another possession. But the Chiefs were going to get another possession one way or another. So then he comes to us and he changes his story. He says, no, we wanted to have the third scored, and then they scored. Then we get the ball last and we can win the game. And then he was asked, okay, well, fine. Was your defense tired, and was that part of the decision making? And he said, no, absolutely not. That is not why I decided to kick off. That's what he said after the game. Then today, John Lynch was like, well, our defense was really tired. And that was part of the reason why we decided to kick off. I was like, that's right. That's right. Our defense was tired. So they keep changing their story, which tells me that they're, like being interrogated and they're trying to figure out what works as they go along. And maybe not knowing the overtime rules isn't why they lost. It's just a bad look in general.
Okay. So you were there and I wasn't. So you're saying it seems fairly obvious that Kyle did not know the overtime rules because he kept changing his story. Okay. Here's what I have to say about that. First of all, he should have known. He should have known the overtime rules. I mean, whether or not that caused the loss, Andy Reid knew the overtime rules. He told his players the overtime rules. Many of the players afterward said they didn't know the overtime rules. And so clearly there was a difference on the Chiefs vis-a-vis that and on the 49ers. That's a very bad look for the coach because the coach is the leader. He's supposed to know these things. And Iggy, he had a whole season to learn it. He had a
Yep.
whole season to learn the
I asked
rules.
Brock Purdy today. I said, "Did you know before that final drive that there were different rules in the overtime in the playoffs, and that if you scored a touchdown, the Chiefs were going to get another possession regardless?" And he said he did know because right before that drive, he went up to Brian Greasy, and Greasy reminded him. So Kyle Shanahan said that he told the position coaches to remind people, but I guess, I mean, you could do that yourself at any
And
point.
he should have done it
Seems like Andy Reid did.
before. He should have done it before the game, not in the game. Should have done it before the game. So again, Iggy, it makes me think this is a leader. This is a leader.
Also, I want to say something else about Kyle Shanahan. So whether or not he knew the rules, I also think he lost his nerve. I think he lost his nerve. He's supposed to be this aggressive, cutthroat offensive coach. So the final play of regulation is 3rd and 4. He calls a pass. It's incomplete. They kick a field goal on 4th and 4. How about on 3rd and 4, you hand the ball off to the offensive player of the year? How about that? You got 1 million runs in your playbook. You got the best running back in football. You got the best left tackle in football, the best tight end in football. Why don't you figure out a run that might work on 3rd and 4 when the defense is expecting pass? And that way, if you don't pick up the first down, you got 4th and short, and you could do it again. That would be the aggressive play, and it'd be exactly what the Chiefs wouldn't want you to do. I'm sure every time they called a pass for Christian McCaffrey, the Chiefs were upset and worried. So you could have done that there. Then in overtime, you get the ball first. It's 3rd and goal from the 9. Again, you call a pass. It doesn't work out, and you kick a field goal. Instead of that, why don't you call a run on 3rd and 4 and then go for it on 4th down? I mean, Kyle said today, well, it felt like a field goal game. Dude, what are you talking about? You know that it doesn't matter what the first 3.5 quarters are like with Patrick Mahomes. Like, you did this against Mahomes 4 years ago? You held him down for 3.5 quarters, and then he scored 21 points in about 7 minutes. You know he can. It's not a field goal game with Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the field. You need the touchdown. You thought you were going to win with the field goal? That to me is the worst thing that Kyle did in this game. He lost his nerve.
I can't argue with you. This was not something that really helped his resume, and he did it in front of the whole world. And you know, there are some people out there, journalists and other people, who are defending him. There's no defense. He doesn't deserve a defense. What's more, the difference between winning and losing is not a little bit. It's all the difference in the world. He lost. He lost in 2019. He lost when he was in Atlanta. When you lose 3 times in a row, you are a Super Bowl loser. I'm sorry. You're not a Super Bowl almost winner. There's no almost winning.
Yeah.
He's a loser. That is his definition. I don't mean as a person or even as a coach. He gets him into the championship game. He twice got him into the Super Bowl, but he's clearly, demonstrably a Super Bowl loser. And that's not a little hurdle. That's a big hurdle. That's the Andy Reid level, and he's not at that level. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say one of the yeah.
Okay.
Go on.
Well, I was just going to say that, you know, when they lost to the Chiefs last time, the Chiefs were favored in that game. The Niners quarterback was Jimmy Garoppolo. They were a younger team. I think it was easier to lose that game psychologically. This time, it's like, we're favored to beat the Chiefs. We still think we're better than the Chiefs. Our quarterback is good. He didn't mess it up. How did we lose this? How did we freaking lose this? I think that's a tough one. And if you think about it for 5 minutes, your mind goes to Kyle Shanahan, and he knows it.
And because their minds are so blown that they lost it, there's been strife after the game. Could you talk a little about the strife after the game, which you don't usually see on a team? Tell some of the things that have been happening since they got beat on Sunday.
Well, immediately, Brandon Ayuk went on social media and says, "Don't forget how you got there." Then his brother says, "How do you let your all-pro wide receiver go and get 3 catches in the Super Bowl? This is why we're leaving San Francisco. Vegas, here we come." And then his girlfriend goes on TikTok and says, "Gee, this might be our last time at Levi's Stadium because we might not be here next year." So already Brandon Ayuk is is really upset. And frankly, I don't blame him at all. He had a great. He's right. I mean, I don't know if I would say it publicly, but I don't know if I wouldn't. He had a great year. He deserved more than 6 targets and 3 catches in the Super Bowl, especially when they're force feeding Debo, who didn't have a great year. Should have went to Brandon. I understand how he feels. Then people realize that the final play of regulation, I said they should have ran it 3rd and 4. Of not a regulation, of overtime. I said they should have ran it. They pass, and Brandon Ayuk's open in the end zone, wide open. He made his defender fall down, but Purdy can't get the pass to him because there's a unblocked rusher. And someone online said, "Oh, it's Colton McKivitz's fault. Right tackle. He should have blocked this guy." Freaking John Feliciano, the right guard who left the game early with an injury or something, goes on Twitter and responds to some random guy and says, "Nah, it's not McKivitz's fault. If the right guard just blocked who was supposed to block, it wouldn't have been a problem." The right guard in the game was Spencer Burford. He goes on Twitter. It's like, "Gee, thanks a lot, John." Then John comes back like a bunch of hours later and is like, "Hey, sorry, I was hungover. I was in a bad mood. I was, this and that." So there's like public back and forth finger pointing on Twitter about who lost the game. I mean, really exactly what you don't want from a team after a crushing loss.
No, that's when they hang together. And losers don't hang together. Losers don't hang together. No. Feliciano to have done that. If he had a problem with Burford, call him up. Talk to him in the locker room. Talk to a coach. You don't go public with it. I would have to say that was a punk thing to do. I don't know the guy. He may be very nice.
I agree.
He should really apologize. He should crawl on his knees to Burford and apologize for having done that. It was very, very bad.
I agree. I would go further. The Niners should not re-sign John Feliciano. Goodbye. You're out.
For that, I happen to agree with you.
You're out. You're out. You're no longer part of this team. You, in the crisis moment, you revealed who you are. You're not a 49er. Gotta go. Sorry. Not sorry.
I love it
for everything. But this is Spencer Burford's job. And if they want to bring in someone else to compete with him, that's fine. But Spencer Burford, people forget he was 21 when they drafted him. He just turned 23. He has a bright future. He did make a mistake on that final play. A lot of people made mistakes. Kyle made mistakes up and down, like left and right in that game. So, yeah, it's really unfortunate. It's too bad to see this team that's been so tight for so long split apart right now. But maybe it's just the emotion of the game.
Well, you can't. No. You can't do it. You can cry like Ayuk did. You could be glum like you saw those guys today. You can't attack each other. A team sticks together. If there's an issue, you work it out in private. It was juvenile and punk what Feliciano did. I'm going to tell you something else.
Yeah.
We've been on.
And what's crazy too is like it's offensive linemen. That's like supposed to be the most tight-knit position group on the team. They get no credit, no glory. All they do is get, singled out when they make one mistake. They're supposed to be the guy saying, "Don't put it all on him. It's not his fault." But John Feliciano needed to set the record straight on Twitter to protect Colton McKivitz. Why? Because that's your friend, and you could do it at the expense of Spencer Burford, who was your competition at the spot you wanted. Well, now you're a free agent. Goodbye. I hope Colton McKivitz appreciates what you did, because no one else does.
Yeah.
And, Spencer Burford's going to remember what you did the rest of his life, and he has every reason to not like you. It wasn't your place to set the record straight on Twitter. Twitter isn't a real place.
Yeah, and a gentleman and a grown-up does it face-to-face.
Yeah.
Face-to-face. Or you keep your mouth shut.
I mean, I don't know Spencer Burford that well, but I have a feeling that if Spencer Burford had any issue with John Feliciano, Spencer Burford would be the kind of guy who would walk up to him and say something face-to-face in a good spirit, not behind the back on Twitter. I think I know Burford well enough to say that.
I love it. I'd like to add.
I mean, you said earlier. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was saying we're talking about strife on the team. I would like to point out another area of it. We've been critical of Shanahan, saying it's conceivable he didn't know the overtime rules. Okay, we criticized him for it. But after the game, at least 2 players came out and said they didn't know the overtime rules. Juszczyk and Armstead. Am I correct, Iggy?
Correct.
Okay. Let's leave Juszczyk out of it for a moment. I want to talk about Armstead because he was for the player, the heart, whatever award it is, and he's got a literacy project up in Sacramento. So I assume he can read because he has a literacy project. If he can read, couldn't he read the rules? Isn't he a grown
Yeah.
up?
Yeah.
Isn't he responsible for his own job? Isn't he a
Yeah.
professional? And this applies
Mhm.
to Juszczyk and all of them. But I'm going after
Mhm.
Armstead because he's got a big mouth. I'm going after him. You're blaming the coach after the game
Mhm.
because you didn't know the rules? What are you, a
Purdy knew.
baby in elementary school? You have to have the teacher. This is your job. When I was a
Yeah.
journalist, I knew what the rules were. This literacy genius couldn't take 5 minutes and read the rules, and now after the game,
Purdy
he's
knew.
blaming the coach. Yeah.
Purdy asked his
So
coach.
so that's another form of dysfunction where the team has strife and is fighting against itself. I think what Juszczyk did and what Armstead did is despicable. It's disgusting. Don't blame the coach. Blame, if you want, don't talk about it or blame yourself because you should have known the damn rule. And it's of course the coach should have gone over it, but you're responsible for what you do too. So I don't like what he and Juszczyk did. And if I were Kyle Shanahan, and thank God I'm not, I wouldn't appreciate that one either. Throw me under the bus because you didn't look up the rules. What are you, 11?
There's more. There's more. I like that.
Keep
There's more.
going.
Steve Wilkes. It seems like Steve Wilkes has been on the hot seat all year. Like they've been itching to make him the scapegoat. Someone asked today, "Hey Kyle, are you going to bring back Steve Wilkes?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, I haven't had those really conversations yet. I got to talk to my coaches. We haven't really talked." He was like, "Are you bringing back Steve Wilkes?" The guy I'm sorry, I don't understand. Are you bringing back Steve Wilkes? And he goes, "Oh, I got to talk to my coaches. I mean, I expect that I will, but it was very non-committal." Which again, I expect they'll bring back Steve Wilkes, but the way they answered the question today, it made it seem like they might reconsider. I don't know. What do you think of that? Did you hear that?
I did. I thought I heard him say, I assume they'll all be back. I thought I heard him say that, but that's vague. And that's
When
just
pressed.
a
Yeah.
placeholder. It's a placeholder. So who knows?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Iggy, a fair question. If you were coaching the 49ers, would you let Wilkes go based on what happened in the Super Bowl?
Um, I I think I would let him go. I think what they asked him to do was unfair. Come to our team. Don't coach your defense. Whatever scheme you want to do is wrong. Do what we do. Uh, Don't coach in the booth. Be on the sideline. It just felt like they neutered him. Hey, we want you to be our coach, but we don't really want you to be our coach. Let him go and promote someone from within who knows what you want to do. Daniel Bullock has been there for 8 years. What about that guy? I think they put him in a terrible position.
I agree. They made him the
They'll keep him.
scapegoat. Now let me say this. I felt for the 4 regulation quarters that defense played very well. I don't think they played well in overtime. You know more about this stuff than I do. It seemed like they went to a soft zone. Did I just lose you, Iggy?
I'm here.
Hi. Okay.
Hi.
I think they went to a soft zone. Wasn't it an overtime where Mahomes had one of those lovely runs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
All
I
of a
mean,
sudden, it
they
seemed like
lost
they lost all
contain.
their aggression. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like
I
he
don't know.
did. Actually, I thought he
They weren't
coached
prepared for
better
that
than.
final play. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I think there's a case to be made for letting him go because of how he performed in overtime. There's a case to be made for letting Kyle go as the offensive coordinator for how he performed in the whole game.
Yeah. I mean,
But Iggy,
the fact that
yeah,
what?
I was going to say there's a definite case for letting one person go. They should get rid of this. What's his name? Young? What's his name? Chase? The defender.
Chase Young.
Oh my God, Iggy. Um, I don't think he plays hard all the time. They spent
No.
the money to get him and not an offensive lineman. And Iggy, sometimes he seems to be loitering, like someone walked onto the field, a loiterer. You know what I mean? He's the people
Yeah,
are
like
doing
the
stuff and he's
security has to
wandering.
come get him and take him away. Yeah, like security has to go
Yeah,
grab him and get him
right.
out of there. Like, sir, go back to the stand. Yeah.
Iggy, are you looking at him the way I am? He just doesn't need to work very hard.
Oh. And it's crazy. Like the Niners felt they weren't good enough, and at the trade deadline, they made one move to put themselves over the top, and they traded for Chase Young. That guy
Yeah.
didn't move the needle whatsoever. So, I mean, it's kind of fitting that the Niners didn't win the Super Bowl this year because they didn't deserve it. That move was supposed to be the move, like trying to experiment with Steve Wilkes and telling him how to coach. That's not a championship decision. They got to clean that stuff up. I wouldn't be against. Maybe Steve Wilkes says, you know what? I don't want this job anymore. If you're going to second guess me, if you're going to tell me what to do, if I don't get any autonomy here, I don't want this job anymore. Now, I can't. Maybe he wouldn't do that, but I could see as a group collectively them saying this didn't work. Steve, you're a good coach, but this did not work, and we got to promote someone from within. Sorry.
Okay.
Also, Brandon Ayuk, what's going to happen with him? You know, we assume he'll come back. They gave a lot of money to Deebo Samuel. They have a lot of money tied up in the wide receiver position. They traded DeForest Buckner. They don't pass the ball that much. I think they were 32nd pass attempt year. Do you see any world where Brandon Ayuk isn't on this team next year?
Let me put it like this. Again, I'm not talking to John Lynch, but Iggy, if they don't have Ayuk on the team next season, that's a big mistake. He's on the verge of superstar.
Yeah.
I really like Juwan Jennings, but I don't think he could take over for Brandon Ayuk. So they better. And they asked him today, are going to be back, and he said, what did he say? If the deal is right, or if the contract, or what did he say? Something like that, right? He was non-committal.
Yeah, he said, are you going to be back here next year? He said, if it makes sense.
If it makes sense, yeah. Okay. If it makes sense,
Yeah.
whatever that means. But I would like to think they're going to bring him back.
If they pay me enough money, that's what it means.
It means if they pay me enough money. So he's already starting that. He's starting that 2 days afterward. I got a question for you, Iggy. Now you bring up what's going to happen to Brandon Ayuk. Where do the 49ers go from here? What are their prospects? Are they a Super Bowl winner next season?
What's interesting, I went and looked it up online. I was curious. What do the sports books think? And they have the Niners as the favorite next year to win the Super Bowl, which is incredible. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean that people think the Niners should have beaten the Chiefs and there was some bad luck and they're going to prove it next year? At what point do people realize that the Niners aren't the best team in the NFL? Like, what do they have to do? How many times do the Chiefs have to win the Super? Anyway, not about the Chiefs. I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl next year. I think they've been a resilient team. They've had some crushing losses, but this one is way more painful. And I think it shakes their confidence to their core. They've always been able to say, you know, we lost, but it's Jaquiski Tartt's fault or it's Tyler Kroft's fault. But we have a great coach and we have a great team. And if we just keep working, we will win. And now I think they're questioning the coach. Like, yeah, we have the players. This was the best team we've ever had. And if we couldn't win it with this, like maybe that guy is the problem. Maybe everything that people have said about that guy is true. And if that's the case, I'm really curious to see what this team's going to be like next year.
Right. It could fade the way the Eagles faded. Did you hear what I said?
Absolutely. Because it seemed like the Eagles started to look at Nick Sirianni and like, oh, you're a fraud. Yeah, Nick Sirianni, same thing. Like I know Kyle calls plays and Sirianni doesn't, but there's a certain attitude that Sirianni had that the Eagles may have fed off of, like an arrogance, a smugness, puffing his chest out, acting like a tough guy. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second. You're the Wizard of Oz. You're the man behind the curtain. You're not scary at all. In fact, you're making us look bad. He lost that team. Is Kyle on the verge of that? I don't know. He's a much better coach than Nick Sirianni, but he has some of that smugness and arrogance. And when you keep blowing it in the Super Bowl, I think people start to look at you as like, what? How have you earned that? How is that arrogance helping you? Us.
And Iggy, he couldn't keep the team together post loss. They went after each other like piranha, and that's really not allowed. It's not allowed.
Right.
There has to be a core of
Right.
self belief and of brotherhood that immediately broke down. Everybody pointing, not everybody, some people pointing fingers at some other people. And
That's
then
right.
the extreme emotion was, it was a very tough loss, but also it may have been more than a loss of a game. It may have been a loss of who we are.
Yeah. Absolutely. The loss of that, because this Niners team always had that feeling like it doesn't really matter what the final result is. We're the best team. We're the
Yeah.
best. And now, like, they've lost to the Chiefs twice. They've really proven that they're not the best team, and they're all getting older. They have to face the fact that might have been their last opportunity. It may not be Kyle's last opportunity in a Super Bowl. He coached for another 20, 25 years. But George Kittle, can he really look in the mirror and say, I'll be back? Maybe not. And it sucks to think that in his potentially last opportunity to be a champion, Kyle gave him 2 catches.
Yeah.
2.
But Iggy, I'd like to say something else. Hold on. You said they have to admit that Kansas City. You said that they had to admit that Kansas City is the best. I'm going to look at it another way. I think the 49ers are the best. I think they're a better team than Kansas City. And I think what is really hurting them today is we're the best team and we still couldn't win.
Yeah. So it's like even when we have the best team, we're not going to be champions. Why?
Right. That's
why.
Right. That's the issue. Why? Is not that Kansas City's better,
and that's
we're better,
right?
And
we could literally have the best team. We did. That's suppressing. We have the best team. We're more talented than them. We have the offensive player of the year. We lost.
Yeah.
Well, then I don't know what to do.
And now,
then I don't know what
to do.
I don't know what
to
do.
That
we trusted.
That's
Kyle.
where they're at today.
We did the work. We had the team. I don't know what to do. That's tough. That's tough.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle had the answers. Steve Turley says, I was ecstatic to ask this question in regards to Kyle Shanahan. You think they have the devil you know is better than the devil you don't above his office? JJ, do you think Kyle's losing the locker room, the vets? I think
on
they're
the
looking
verge.
at him different than ever that they ever had. Yeah.
On the verge.
We'll see what happens this offseason. Sirs11 says, I've officially given up on Kyle. He just can't get out of his own arrogant way, and it's hurting the franchise. Niners got to get rid of some of the Cabo crew, starting with Debo and Juice. I wonder if this crew's going to be vacationing together. I don't think they can look each other in the eye right now. I want to know, when are they going to be friends again? Use Jordan Mason. HR says, hey, Kyle, the Super Bowl is over. It's too late to cover your butt now. The only way to fix this, win 20 games next season en route to the Lombardi. Or they just win the Lombardi.
Yeah.
Yeah. James Welsh, this loss was especially hard. There was more hope after 2019. Now the team is older and showing it. I also don't believe the quarterback search is over.
That's interesting. It shouldn't be over. They should always be looking for a quarterback. No. Hi, Carol.
Yep. Bill Walsh was looking for a quarterback after Joe Montana won his second Super Bowl. Carol T. Yeah. I'm not ready to call for Kyle's head, but he needs help. Associate head coach or OC. He's too focused on the implementation of his scheme and not enough on the flow of the game.
Carol, I agree with you. And I had a former coach in the NFL write to me this morning and say exactly what you've just said.
Carlos says, if he's a high-level loser, do we move off him now?
Iggy, I would have moved off of him after last season.
Remember what you said?
But you can't because the Schlemiel who runs the team gave him an extension.
Yeah. Remember we said last year you'd fire his ass?
I think I did. His tush.
Adam Duncan, $2. Jorgen 1990 says, Grant, do you think you're representing your organization well right now, sitting there wearing a backwards hat? Also, why haven't we cut Moody yet? That was a question I asked Brock Purdy a couple months ago in jest. I'm doing this for Brock. Why haven't we cut Moody yet? He's getting better. You got to give him another chance. Dark Ranger says humility doesn't seem to be Kyle's playbook. I keep hearing that he seems to call passes instead of runs to show off his genius. You both think that's what happened this past Sunday. Did his ego cost the team the biggest W? Reed seems humble. Andy Reid.
I think his ego was intimately involved with that loss.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. Running the ball doesn't make you look like a genius as much as passing successfully does, but running the ball can make you a champion. Julio Flores says, question for Papa Cohn. What would Eddie DeBartolo do if he could see the way Kyle is disrespecting the fans and the media?
Oh, he would have fired Kyle after last season. He fired George Seifert and then brought in Mariucci, which wasn't the right move. George had won 2 Super Bowls. This guy's won no Super Bowls. He would have fired him already.
Yeah. Chris Tallarico, the more aftermath interviews I see, the more I think that Shanny has banana hand in the locker room. Debo, B.A., Kittle, Bosa, Purdy all look broken.
Broken is a very good adjective, yes.
Official
I don't
DNA
want to
Music
touch that.
88 says, Kyle coached like he had a pre-Super Bowl hangover. Well, I wonder if they're going to have a
let's
real
move on.
Super Bowl hangover. That thing is pretty real.
Okay, are you still with us, Iggy? You got that glazed look.
Am I back? Am I here?
Can you read that thing? You're back. You're
Sorry
back.
about that. Mississippi Niners. Kyle didn't
read that.
Kyle didn't realize he'll never win the Super Bowl until he seriously addresses the O-line. All of his Niner failures are because of the line.
Not all. Some. He has a lot of other failures, like 3 Super Bowls.
Chris Tallarico says, to me, it's a good sign that the national folks aren't calling Shanny a genius this time. The media folks seem to be holding him accountable.
Good, because he hasn't shown he's a genius.
Yep, says Kyle handles overtime rules the same way he handles rain games, wet balls, i.e. not prepared. Abu Marco 23 says the season ended last year when the right side of our O-line failed against Hassan Reddick, and they did the same damn thing with Chris Jones. HR.
Well,
for Kyle, he views players as cogs of his system. This mindset prevents him from taking advantage of matchups because he always takes the macro view.
I agree.
I would agree. Tortomasa says Jed should bring in Vrabel. He is a leader who will add pressure to Kyle, which is what he likely needs. Kyle is too damn comfortable.
What would Vrabel be doing?
Yeah, what would he do? He wouldn't be the head coach. Andrew says, Papa Cohn, if we're still covering the Niners, what would your question be following Grant's?
Oh, if I was still covering the team, I would continue to ask Kyle what he was thinking in the third quarter. I would come back to it again and again and again. I'd say, you haven't answered my question. Give it another shot.
Yeah. Nicholas says, concerned about ton of money to players of the past. Yeah. Armstead, Debo, they're making a lot of money. Carson says, Kyle's lack of self-accountability makes me think he will never change. Hopefully all of his criticism will cause him to self-reflect. Probably not. Been saying that for years.
He's incapable of self-reflection.
Yep. Says, funny that Jed didn't want to talk today. Oh, it is funny.
Yeah, what a surprise. I'm so surprised.
Now he doesn't want to talk. Now he wants to let Kyle and John
Yeah, I'm so surprised.
Chris says, Kittle, BA, CMC, Bosa, Debo, all of that look that they know this was their best chance and that they won't make it back with this team or coach.
Conceivably.
Niners daddy says Kyle Shanahan is incapable of ownership of his awful decisions.
That's for sure.
This guy says it seems like even if the Niners had won, Grant and Pops would still have negative comments about Kyle. Kyle didn't miss the extra point. Kyle didn't miss a block on Jones and OT. Kyle didn't fumble. Is that you, Kyle?
Okay, here's what I have to say. It's because we're haters. We're such haters. I hate Iggy. Yeah. I hate everyone.
Secretly. Yeah. Microphonics says, remember when the Warriors fired Mark Jackson because he just couldn't do it, even though it wasn't a popular decision? He did. When everyone told him not to. Microphonics says, remember when the Warriors fired Mark Jackson because he just couldn't do it, even though it wasn't a popular decision? What happened? They brought in Steve Kerr. The Niners need to do that with Kyle.
Right, and I will
I just
add,
know,
Joe Lacob is a better owner than the York bunch.
no question. They actually have standards. Brother Bob, no parades for 2 Super
Yeah,
Bowl losses and 2 NFC Championship losses and wins. Yep. Chris Tallarico says people really need to stop
no
with that
more.
missed PAT. The game wouldn't have gone to overtime with that PAT. Casey would have been playing for the TD, not a field goal. They would have gotten it exactly like they did in overtime. True.
Yes.
Microphonic says, and I can't help but think that Trey would have won it for us. A 6'5" quarterback is not missing BA in the red zone, even though Chris Jones is coming in hot. I don't know.
You know what?
Neil,
Enough
what
with
Kyle did was
Trey.
What Kyle did was straight malpractice, not running the right plays for CMC or Brandon Ayuk. Next season is going to be brutal playing KC, Buffalo, Detroit, Green Bay, LA twice, and Miami. Yeah, it's going to be a tough schedule.
They're going to play Buffalo next season? Iggy,
Yeah.
they play Buffalo and
Yeah.
Kansas City next season?
Yeah.
Those are 2 losses right
Yeah.
there. AFC, they have trouble with AFC teams.
Yeah, they certainly do. Brother Bob says that video has 89K views. My Twitter is wild right now. Which video? Chris C. Charlie says, fair rebuttal to your point on Kyle versus Andy. Andy took 20 years to win a Super Bowl, lost 3 NFC Championship games in a Super Bowl with Philly. Maybe Kyle needs change of scenery and year 20 to do the same. 20 years.
God love him. I hope he gets it.
He's not Andy Reid. Thomas says, Ola Grunt, to your question with Debo, do you care that no one respects you?
I respect him. Don't you, Tomas? I respect him. That was a nasty comment, wasn't it, Iggy?
Yeah, well, I didn't lose the Super Bowl. Steven says, what is the point of a captain, Trent Williams, if the O-line allows missed blocks?
I don't know.
His fault. Microphonic says, Kyle Shanahan can only coach game managers. Any quarterback that comes under Kyle Shanahan has to tailor their skill set to his offense, not the other way around. And that mindset of Kyle Shanahan will never get beat KC or bring us ring number 6.
I think so.
Cigars are for winners. Jed gets a cup of failure. Ramon Gonzalez says, Tim Ryan pointed out Niners had 12 third downs with an average of 9.5 yards to go. I think that stat would have improved if Kyle ran CMC more.
Duh.
Oh, too much sauce says, if has Bosa's career already peaked in 2022? He can still apply pressure, but slips, tumbles before actually making a play. His motor control is diminishing. I mean, he didn't have as good of a year. Chris Tallarico says, in the end, SF had every chance to win the game regardless of all the mistakes. 3rd and 4 from the 9. He called a pass when he had to know the blitz was coming. He should have run it. That's on Kyle Shanahan. I would have ran it. Shady Luke. Wilkes set the team up to win. Blame Shanny. Dude's a supposed guru. Shane Steichen called a better game for Philly's offense versus the same defense last year. He did. Chris Tallarico. BA will absolutely test free agency, and he should. Well, he's not going to be. They're still under contract for 1 more year. Sir Cash Money says, good thing Kyle got that extension before his performance. This performance. That would have been scary for leadership to possibly be at risk of losing their job. Boxing fan. I'm predicting a bad season next year. In the following season, the Niners will be the first NFL team to lose a Super Bowl in their home stadium. That's bleak.
You mean
Kylie
they'll
says,
play
I'm
in the
seeing some
Super Bowl?
similarities between Kyle
Wait a
Shanahan and the
minute.
Warriors' Mark Jackson. Maybe the Niners should move on and find their Steve Kerr.
Maybe
covered
Steve
Mark
Kerr could coach him. Yeah. He had to go. He could only get him so far.
Mojo McClary says in 90. Mojo McClary says in 90, team had a brutal loss to the Giants in the NFC Championship that set in motion significant team changes. Will this loss have similar repercussions? It could.
You know, not the way Lynch was talking today. He was saying how great they are and how much he loves working with Kyle Shanahan. It seems to me they're committed to the same prospect of failure that they've had all along. High level losing.
Yeah, Kev Prime in LA says karma for how Kyle and Office did Trey. Nebu says, did you see Kyle partying with Lil Wayne post-game? I didn't. That was 4 years ago. Brother Bob says, Kyle wears too many hats, GM, head coach, OC, and Super Bowl partier. Dazza says, I can't see this group getting back to the Super Bowl emotionally. Don't know how the players get over this. Also, the key veterans are getting older. Flav says both coaches made mistakes. Reed's players bailed him out. They didn't. The first 21 years of his career, mentally, these teams are different. Casey believes they're going to win. Niners hope that Casey loses. Basra says if Niners get rid of Wilkes, who can we replace him with? Mike Vrabel? Get Vrabel. Belichick's available if they want a new head coach. Jeff Caravella says, Lowell Grant, want both your takes. Let's say you're right, Kittle and some of the legacy emotional leaders fade out. Who becomes the emotional, spiritual leader in 2024? Who can inspire them if they lose trust in Kyle?
Oh, that's I'd like to think about it a moment. I would say, first of all, I'm not sure I agree with the premise. If Kittle is still there, he'll be quite a leader. If Trent Williams is there, Bosa, he'll be quite a leader. But the one who needs to grow into being the ultimate leader is the quarterback. Steve Young was the leader.
And he seems like he has all the capability of being that guy.
Yeah.
God bless America says Kyle needs to have a cemetery walk this offseason. Yes, he does. Dazza0187 says watching the third quarter in the Super Bowl was painful. After Brown's interception, we had that game. The Chiefs' offense looked rattled.
They did look rattled for a while.
McCaffrey as a decoy. They did. Using McCaffrey as a decoy, moving left instead of using him as a blocker, Frank Gore, since O-line needed help, was frustrating. Kyle was not confusing the Chiefs. Chris says, Lowell, I rewatched the catch game before the Super Bowl. Lowell, I rewatched the catch game before the Super Bowl. You were there. Was Montana throwing the ball away? Grant, use this to get better internet, man. Yeah, sorry.
He was not throwing the ball away. It was sprint right option. It was a play. He threw it right to Dwight. No. That was a play that they had practiced.
Oh, that was the video. So this guy posted a video of Kyle Shanahan admitting he didn't understand the rule. That was viral. Right. Dustin Dagg says Kyle also didn't plant 0 fumble. Jordan Mason didn't play 0. Oh, this internet sucks. Ramon Gonzalez says Belichick could get us a ring, but
yeah, forget it. Iggy, can you hear me? Let me tell you what's going on. Iggy was down in Santa Clara all day today, and he drove back, and I said it was my fault. I said, come by my house. We can have a little lunch, and we could broadcast from my house. He's upstairs where the internet isn't as good. He's in my wife's office, and I'm downstairs where the internet is better. So we'll never make this mistake again. What I figure, Iggy, let's get through the comments and let's wrap it up. Okay?
Belichick would get us a ring, but Jed shot is wide. Helperman 123 says even if we get rid of Brock and get another quarterback, that doesn't mean it will fix the issues with Kyle. Kyle has never developed a quarterback in his life or has drafted a competent O-line.
Agree.
True.
Let's move on.
Adrian Medina says both Tyreek and Devontae Adams were traded for first and second round picks. Would you take that for Brandon Ayuk? Better just keep Brandon Ayuk. It takes a long time to learn this system. Connor N says the Super Bowl film on Debo is awful. He should not be on this team next year. Trade him. Use the big guy money elsewhere. Yeah, I'd rather keep Ayuk than Debo. Luis says, I know this sounds corny, but I'm feeding my baby bananas, and her hands are literally banana hands. Reminds me of Colin James. It's funny. Wave says, how do people reconcile Kyle being able to get to the Super Bowl with Mr. Irrelevant and a quarterback as bad as Jimmy with him also not being a great coach?
Whatever you say, Flav.
Yeah, you're right.
Let's move on, Iggy.
Jared says, I've been hearing that the Niners did not know the OT rules. Is that true or false? Seems very true. Rob Schneider says, anyone see 140 left, fourth Chiefs get extra downs? That's not true. It wasn't true. Sorry. Didn't happen. It was 2nd and 1. The TV got it wrong. All right, well, that's the next time I'm on. I'll have better internet. Really sorry. Really frustrating. Dad, good show. You carried it.
I love you, guy. I'll see you. We'll have a cup of tea upstairs.
All right, I love you too. I'll see you guys later.